When a narcissist betrays you, it might appear at first glance as if they have won some kind of battle. They seem unbothered, perhaps even emboldened, walking away without remorse, without hesitation. But this illusion is dangerous. It masks a deeper psychological reality, a truth they cannot escape, no matter how cleverly they disguise it. Betrayal does not liberate the narcissist, it changes them, invisibly but profoundly, to the very act they believe has set them free. You see, betrayal isn't merely an action. It's a fracture in the psyche, a moral injury not just to the victim but to the perpetrator. For a narcissist whose identity is already a fragile construction of lies, half-truths, and grandiosity, the act of betraying someone who trusted them introduces an intolerable contradiction into their self-concept. They must now hold two conflicting ideas at once: that they are a superior, admirable person, and that they have committed an act of deep moral cowardice. These two realities cannot easily coexist. And rather than integrating the betrayal honestly, learning from it and confronting the shame, they repress it, deny it, bury it. But the psyche is not a garbage dump. You cannot simply throw away parts of yourself you find inconvenient. Every unresolved betrayal festers in the unconscious. It breeds paranoia. The narcissist begins to project their own untrustworthiness onto others. They start to expect betrayal from every corner because deep down, they know what they are capable of. They cannot truly trust others because they themselves have become profoundly untrustworthy. This leads to a profound kind of loneliness, a gnawing isolation where connection is impossible because suspicion is always in the room. Moreover, the psychological weight of unacknowledged guilt cannot be underestimated. In the short term, narcissists may appear energized by betrayal. After all, they achieved their immediate goal, whether it was control, admiration, or revenge. But in the longer arc of their lives, they are dragged down by an invisible burden. Their behavior becomes increasingly erratic, desperate, and self-destructive. Betrayal compounds betrayal. One lie demands another. One manipulation requires further manipulation to maintain the illusion. What looked like freedom was actually the beginning of a prison sentence. That, philosophically, we could say that betrayal is a violation not just of trust between people, but of the fundamental order that makes life bearable. Every act of betrayal corrupts the soul of the betrayer. It turns the world into a place where meaning is harder to find, where relationships feel hollow, where peace is always out of reach. Narcissists think they can escape consequences because they think consequences are external: lawsuits, exposure, humiliation. But the deepest consequences are internal. The punishment is baked into the act itself. And so when you are betrayed by a narcissist, it is critical to remember they did not walk away unscathed. They walked away wounded, whether they show it or not. They are chained to the act of betrayal, and those chains get heavier over time. They can run from the people they've hurt, they can run from the situations they destroyed, but they cannot run from themselves. Remember this: betrayal is not a path to freedom. It is a slow descent into a private, inescapable hell. A narcissist's entire existence is predicated on one thing: image. Not character, not virtue, not internal strength. Image. What matters to them is not who they actually are, but who they can convince others they are. It's a fragile edifice built on admiration, fear, envy, whatever currency they can extract from the people around them. But the problem with an image is that it's not real, it's not solid. It can be shattered in an instant, and somewhere inside the narcissist knows this. They are acutely aware of how precarious their position is. That's why betrayal doesn't grant them peace. It exposes them, even if no one else sees it yet. When a narcissist betrays someone close to them, they aren't just harming the victim. They are damaging their own carefully constructed facade. Trustworthiness, loyalty, moral authority, these are part of the persona they sell to the world. And when they betray you, they know, even if no one else does yet, that the truth is now a ticking time bomb. They know that the mask has slipped. That knowledge is intolerable to the narcissist because it threatens the only thing they truly value, external validation. This creates a deep and gnawing insecurity. After a betrayal, the narcissist becomes obsessed with controlling perception. They start lying more, manipulating more, gaslighting more. They don't just try to erase the betrayal, they try to rewrite reality itself. It wasn't my fault. They deserved it. I'm the real victim here. These are the stories they tell, not only to others, but to themselves. But deep down, they know these stories are fragile. They know that with even a slight shift, a confession, a revelation, a simple moment of clarity from someone else, the whole thing could collapse. And so they live in fear, not necessarily the kind of fear that makes you cower. More often, it's the kind of fear that makes you frantic, aggressive, and unpredictable. They become hypersensitive to criticism. They lash out at perceived slights. They become paranoid about loyalty. Why? Because they have betrayed loyalty themselves. And when you live by deception, you come to expect deception everywhere. Philosophically, there's a profound irony here. In attempting to protect their image at all costs, narcissists end up destroying the very thing they sought to preserve. They lose authenticity, they lose depth, they lose real relationships, all for the sake of appearances. It's a form of self-annihilation, masked as self-preservation. And the longer they go on, the more brittle they become. They don't grow stronger by hiding their flaws, they grow weaker. And eventually, the image they worshipped becomes a prison they cannot escape. This is why betrayal never brings peace for a narcissist. Because peace requires authenticity. It requires the ability to face oneself honestly, to accept flaws, to make amends. A narcissist can't do this. They are trapped, maintaining a facade that gets heavier, more complicated, and more false with every passing day. So the next time you wonder if they got away with it, remember this: they are not free. They are prisoners of their own image, haunted by a truth they are too terrified to confront. After a betrayal, you might expect the narcissist to feel a sense of closure, as if they finally accomplished whatever hidden goal was driving them. But closure is not available to people who operate outside the bounds of genuine morality. Instead of resolution, what actually begins is a downward spiral, a cycle of self-destruction that accelerates with time. It's a pattern rooted in a simple but brutal psychological truth. When you betray someone else, you fundamentally betray yourself. A narcissist by nature cannot acknowledge failure or wrongdoing. Their entire psychological survival depends on maintaining an image of superiority and infallibility. But when they betray someone, particularly someone who genuinely trusted and cared for them, they fracture the already unstable structure of their own psyche. They can't make peace with what they've done because doing so would require admitting fault, and admitting fault would unravel the very identity they're desperately clinging to. And so they attempt to cope in the only ways they know how, by seeking new sources of validation. They chase the next relationship, the next conquest, the next admirer who will temporarily prop up their crumbling sense of self. But each new victory feels emptier than the last because it demands greater deception, greater manipulation, greater betrayal to sustain the illusion. What was once a conscious betrayal becomes a compulsive cycle, a treadmill of destruction they cannot step off. And this is why narcissists often seem to repeat the same patterns over and over again, even when it's clearly not working for them. They don't learn. It can't. Because learning would mean admitting that the original betrayal was a mistake, and the narcissistic ego is structured precisely to avoid that admission. So, instead of growth, there is decay. Instead of wisdom, there is greater desperation. And it's important to understand that this cycle isn't just emotional. It affects their entire lives. Their friendships become shallower. Their romantic relationships become more volatile. Their professional reputations often suffer. Over time, the narcissist becomes surrounded by people who either fear them, pity them, or simply tolerate them out of obligation. The richness of genuine connection, which requires trust, vulnerability, and mutual respect, becomes entirely inaccessible to them. And somewhere deep down, they know it. Philosophically, we can think of this cycle as a kind of spiritual entropy. Betrayal sets in motion a decay, not just of relationships, but of the self. Every time the narcissist refuses to confront their wrongdoing, they move a little further away from the possibility of redemption. They lose touch with the parts of themselves that could have been strong, noble, courageous. What's left is a hollow imitation of a life, restless, anxious, endlessly hungry for external affirmation, but incapable of internal peace. So understand this: when you witness a narcissist seemingly moving on after betrayal, you are not seeing strength. You are seeing a pattern of avoidance that will eventually consume them from the inside out. They have not escaped the consequences of their actions. They are living them every single day, whether they can admit it or not. The real tragedy isn't that they betrayed you, it's that in betraying you, they have condemned themselves to a life of endless, restless seeking and never finding. When we talk about the narcissist's inability to find peace after betrayal, we have to understand the critical role of shame. Shame is not just an uncomfortable feeling, it is a profound internal reckoning with the fact that we have violated a standard we were supposed to uphold. It strikes at the very core of who we are, and it demands either transformation or deeper denial. A narcissist, however, is constitutionally incapable of facing shame honestly. Instead, shame becomes their silent punisher, lurking in the background of their mind, poisoning their thoughts, distorting their perceptions, and sabotaging their relationships. Now, from the outside, this isn't always obvious. Narcissists are often masters at projecting an image of superiority. Even after the most disgraceful behavior, they may appear grandiose, confident, even triumphant, but this is a carefully manufactured facade designed not only to deceive others, but to defend themselves against the devastating internal consequences of shame. You cannot wrestle with what you refuse to admit exists. And so, instead of owning their betrayal, they bury it. They bury it under anger, under blame, under endless rationalizations, but repression doesn't erase shame. It simply drives it deeper, where it festers out of sight, growing more powerful with time. Psychologically, this is devastating. An unresolved core of shame warps the narcissist's identity. It creates an ongoing state of inner dissonance, the deep, haunting sense that something is wrong, but an utter refusal to look at it directly. This leaves them in a permanent state of agitation. They become hypersensitive to perceived criticism, paranoid about being exposed, and endlessly defensive. Every interaction, every relationship, every achievement is tainted by the unresolved fear that someone, somewhere, will uncover the truth about who they really are. Philosophically, you could say that shame is a mirror. It reflects back to us the parts of ourselves that have fallen short of what is good, true, and just. In a healthy person, this mirror, painful though it may be, becomes a tool for growth. It prompts reflection, repentance, and ultimately renewal. But the narcissist smashes the mirror rather than looking into it. They believe that by destroying the reflection, they can escape the truth. They cannot. They are left navigating a shattered world of illusions, and deep down, they know it. That gnawing, relentless sense of moral failure haunts them. It whispers to them in the moments between distractions, in the quiet hours they can't fill with noise, in the failed relationships and the hollow victories. The irony is that the very thing they believe they have escaped, accountability, is the one thing that could have set them free. But because they refuse to face their shame honestly, they are condemned to carry it indefinitely. A psychological burden that poisons every part of their life. So when you think about the narcissists who betrayed you, don't imagine that they have escaped justice simply because they haven't been publicly exposed or humiliated. Understand that shame, silent but merciless, is already doing its work. And remember this, the punishment for betrayal isn't always delivered by the world. Sometimes the most unbearable punishments are the ones we carry inside, in the parts of ourselves we can never outrun. When a narcissist betrays someone who genuinely cared for them, they don't just destroy the relationship, they destroy their own capacity for genuine connection. It's not simply a matter of burning a bridge with another person. It's the slow and brutal erosion of their ability to form meaningful bonds at all. Because trust, once shattered in this way, does not only affect the betrayed, it contaminates the betrayer as well. They may continue to pursue relationships, of course, often with great enthusiasm, but the relationships become increasingly hollow. Interactions are reduced to a performance, a calculated exchange of attention, admiration, or control. They might still demand loyalty, still crave devotion, but they are incapable of offering it in return. They have undermined the very structure that would make such exchanges meaningful. They can't trust others because deep down they know they themselves are not trustworthy. They cannot receive genuine love because at some level they are aware that they do not deserve it. And instead of confronting this unbearable reality, they double down on the performance, on the manipulation, on the pursuit of external validation to cover up the growing internal emptiness. Psychologically, this is devastating. Over time, the narcissist becomes alienated not only from others, but from themselves. They lose the ability to distinguish between genuine connection and manipulation because they have lived so long in a state of self-deception. Their lives become a series of shallow encounters, filled with dramatic highs and lows, but devoid of the stability and fulfillment that come from relationships rooted in authenticity and trust. Philosophically, it's a profound tragedy. Human beings are relational creatures. We are wired for connection, for mutual recognition, for shared meaning. To lose the ability to participate in that, to live in a world where every relationship is a transaction, every person a tool or an obstacle, is to live in a profoundly impoverished state of existence. It is to be surrounded by people and yet completely alone. And the great irony is this. The narcissist believes betrayal serves their interests. They believe it makes them stronger, freer, more in control. But in truth, it strips them of the very things that make life worth living. Trust, love, connection, intimacy, meaning. They are left with only the appearance of relationships, hollow echoes of what could have been, forever chasing the thing they destroyed with their own hands. So remember this, the narcissist's betrayal didn't just cost you something, it cost them everything. They didn't just lose you, they lost the very part of themselves that was still capable of real love. One of the most important truths we must grapple with is this. The narcissist's betrayal does not define your worth. It never did. Betrayal often leaves victims questioning themselves, wondering if they were foolish, if they were weak, if perhaps they deserved what happened. But this line of thinking plays directly into the narcissist's unspoken agenda. They want their betrayal to be your burden. They want you to carry the weight of their moral failure. They want you to internalize the damage they caused, because if you do, they can avoid facing it themselves. But this is a profound lie. Someone else's inability to honor loyalty, to uphold trust, to act with basic human decency, that is not your failure. That is a reflection of their character, not yours. And understanding this distinction is not just emotionally important, it's psychologically vital. Because if you allow their betrayal to corrupt your sense of self, you extend the damage indefinitely. You allow the wound to become an identity. The truth is, your willingness to trust, to care, to be vulnerable, these were not weaknesses, they were strengths. They were signs of your capacity for connection, for courage, for living authentically in a world that often punishes those very virtues. And yes, it was those virtues that the narcissist exploited. But the exploitation does not invalidate their worth. If anything, it highlights it. It shows exactly what was missing in the betrayer and what was present in you. Philosophically, this is essential. Because life, if it is to be meaningful, must involve risk. There is no love without vulnerability, no trust without uncertainty. To shut down, to close yourself off in the aftermath of betrayal may feel like self-protection, but it is ultimately self-destruction. It is a slow death of the very parts of you that make life rich and meaningful. And if you allow the narcissist's betrayal to turn you cold, cynical, and suspicious of all genuine connection, then you allow them to steal not just your peace, but your future. The narcissist will live out the consequences of their betrayal whether you see it happen or not, but you have a different choice. You can choose to refuse to carry their shame. You can choose to heal without hardening. You can choose to trust again, not blindly, not foolishly, but bravely. To move forward not in bitterness, but in strength. Because your capacity for trust, for love, for loyalty, these are not weaknesses that made you a victim. They are strengths that will make you whole again. Now, the real victory is not in watching the narcissist suffer for their betrayal. The real victory is in reclaiming yourself from the wreckage they tried to leave you in. It is in building a life rooted in authenticity, connection, and meaning. The very things they can never truly have. But remember this. Your worth was never measured by the way they treated you. Your worth is measured by the fact that even after betrayal, you are still capable of choosing love over fear, strength over bitterness, and life over despair.